Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the UNESCO Regional Office in Santiago and the UNESCO International Institute of Education Planning, I extend a warm welcome to the second meeting of the seminar series. And this initiative is part of the Regional Alliance for Education Transformation and Innovation, we call ARTIE, and it's a space that seeks to strengthen the strategic leadership from our region to be able to guide digital transformation. In our first meeting, we outlined the regional landscape and explored UNESCO's reference frameworks. Today, we take a deeper step in this session, and we are going to the topic that brings us together, which is governance, leadership, and capacity building. We know that digital transformation is not just a matter of infrastructure or technology, it's fundamentally a matter of vision, a matter also of management and human talent. And this implies some considering the following questions. How do we govern this transformation so that it's inclusive and focused on the expanding rights? What kind of leadership do we need in our schools, in our ministries to manage the changes? And how can we build the institutional capacities and the digital culture that is necessary for the policies to reach classrooms and also generate a real impact, right? These are the questions that will occupy us today. And we thank all of you for being here. And now I hand over to my colleague, Amparo Naranjo. Amparo, the time is yours. Thank you very much, Fernanda. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you again in the second gathering. And we're going to talk about leadership with a panel that is really special with professionals who have been working a lot with this topic in the digital transformation. And we will start with the first person, Beatrice. She is chief of team in Paris and she works the leadership in education, especially. Welcome, Beatrice, and we would like to ask you. We understand that your work focuses on what is a systemic leadership. So, what that goes beyond the directions and creates um, employees and other key actors. We would like to ask you to tell us how can we, um, how are the capacities developed at the system level to create the necessary conditions for educational transformation and in this current digital age? Welcome, Beatriz. Thank you very much. It's good to be here with you. We see that there are more than 200 participants here. And for me, it's an honor to be here and be able to talk to you about leadership in education in the digital era. Well, to start, our mission is to strengthen the capacity of the countries that are part of UNESCO to plan and suggest their educational systems. And here we're talking about digital age. How can we transform the educative systems transforming every time of digital tools? And that requires a really special leadership, very well trained, very well prepared leadership that knows how to collaborate, knows how to be effective. And what I would like to focus a little more is that we've seen uh, what the challenges that the dedication leadership is changing, and more and more we are in a very complex and uncertain world where there are challenges that are not only related to technology, but the social issues, the crisis, and we need to integrate technology. That is something that is key. So we need the educational systems to intervene and understand well the technology, and all the leaders have to take it to several levels of systems. So that's why we see that people who are leading the system, they need to think about a leadership that was really clear, more direct, from ministries to schools, and where they need to think, well, we gotta define the politics, and now we are in a moment of many challenges, change in governance, change in health, the use of data that is not something easy to be done, and also on top of all of that, a digital transformation. So that makes it really difficult for someone who's directing an education system locally or nationally at the schools, what they need to do. And that's why it's so important to know what kind of capacities and abilities are possible for the people to have. So on one hand, there are types of skills that are more linked to knowledge and the design of implementation of this transformation, the digital politics. We need to have a strategic vision with clear objectives and indicators that are aligned to these politics based in evidence. We need to have data, but also the investigation is to start and understand the needs of the school, of the students. We cannot forget the teachers, directors, and this politics should have enough resources to be sustainable a long term. We've been seeing many politics for technology, for investments in technology, investments for computers and technology that are obsolete because they were not thought in a long term. But they these politics did not support the development of these tools at a medium term when they broke, and the help when they broke, and the softwares, the different softwares that were supposed to be updated. So these resources aligned to the vision and the objectives is really, really important. For one side, we need the digital politics, and the second thing, it's the participation with the entrance of the digital politics in schools and also the ministry. There are many, many other actors that are, on one hand, actors that use technology. They are the experts in technology. It's necessary to talk to them and understand what is a national, regional, or school policy. And on the other part, there's also the private sector, and they have all the computers, the softwares, and everything. So there are many players to participate, and it's necessary to understand how to work with them. The third thing is the context, the institutional context from other policies, for instance, based on the curriculum or the evaluation or the administration, the purchase of computers, or the adaptation needed for this context. And also, this context depends a lot on the capacity. If there's no capacity to integrate technology in the schools by the teachers, by the directors, the leaders at local and regional and national level, the politics are not going to be implemented. So it's important to know what are the capacities and formats. And the last thing, to define the strategies for implementation. So this is on one side, and the second is as important as that. To lead the digital transformation requires abilities that we need knowledge, but we also need the strategies. We need to know how to collaborate, to adapt, to talk, teamwork, communicate, lead teams, and work with other people, and be able to adapt ourselves to changes in short and medium and long terms. And this is something we're not so used to do in this context that changes so much. For me, this is what I would like to highlight in this introduction about leadership. Thank you very much, Beatrice. Thank you for emphasizing the urgency of the policies and the need of a systemic and focus. It's not by chance that we are starting by this topic of governance because the experience shows, just like you showed Beatrice, that in spite of the big efforts and investments, without a clear governance and an effective leadership, the initiatives run the risk of generate frustration and lack of efficacy and bad use of the resources. I'd like to remind you that in this first session, we're going to have a structured conversation with our panelists as it was presented. Beatrice, in her main intervention, will be able to talk about those interventions with other panelists just for 2 minutes. And then finally, Beatrice may close with her final remarks about the aspects that you will hear. And then the next person, who is Ramon Leniarte, is Senior Specialist of Education Program for FTP. And Ramon is going to talk right now about the topics that Beatrice started talking about. Hello, Ramon. Ramon. I don't hear you very well. Do you hear me well? Yes, we hear you loud and clear. Perfect. Thank you very much, Beatrice. It seems to me that this is a really relevant topic to all these dimensions that you mentioned, um, or the digital transformation to impulse through the development of capacities and intervenience in all the system. So how can we create these conditions that are necessary, that are so diverse, that are countries in this region in Latin America, Caribbean. I think it's really important to mention the conditions. Many countries that have been pioneers. We remember everything that all the experiences in Chile, in Colombia, and we've been seeing many things like that. We've been seeing the focus in everything that is material and the technology. When we generated a great investment and we saw this strategically overall of this need to develop the capacities to follow up these processes, and this is really something that is critical, and these are lessons that we've learned. And also in this point, well, we were talking about sustainability, right? The need to plan this transformation in a way that the reinforcements and the efforts that are put are sustainable through time, and especially in the scenario that we have in so many changes in Latin America and Caribbean. We know that these are really dynamic areas. There are many transitions like social, economical, political changes, and sometimes that are really complex um, scenarios. And throughout time, these weekends, right? We've been seeing that in Peru and in other countries. That at some moment when we talk about digital transformation, well, these are the reflections. These are the things that I would like to share with you. And thank you very much for giving me this time and this, let's say, this first stimulation for our dialogues here. Thank you very much. Ramon, we hear you, and we would like to give back the word to Beatrice. You have 2 minutes for your closing remarks with comments about what Ramon said. Beatrice, thank you. Thank you very much, Ramon. We were taking a look at the data for these courses, and we have been seeing these reforms in Latin America in the area of technology in the last 3 years since 21, 23, and there are more than 15. And one of the great challenges is the implementation. And if it's really well written, well defined, if there's no capacity, no resources, no clear definition of who's going to do and how it's going to do, actually, this is uncertain if this happens or not after it's sold. It's really important to have an effective leadership to make happen, to implement these changes. And for that, there is the need to have the capacity and the training, not only of the leadership, but we need to understand what is the proper technology for the different systems. And we need to collaborate with IT people, and that's also an important investment that now it's more and more important in the ministries that it was not happening before, to hire, to know who are the technological um, collaborators. And for the ministry, for the curriculum, for the schools, this is something really important to know how to choose them, how to hire them, and they might understand that it's a educational system and it's supposed to be sustainable. Thank you very much, Beatrice. Thank you very much, Ramon. I enjoy that this we're trying to think about how, right? How can we introduce technology in the educational dynamics? Now we're gonna invite Ramon again for his main intervention. I'd like to mention how experienced Ramon is with technical and vocational education, and we would like to invite you to explore how innovative experiences such as centers of excellence of innovation in TBT can act as engines that drive innovation throughout the education system. Could you please talk about that? And thank you very much, Ramon. Thank you very much, Amparo. Yes. And Fernando was saying that the digital transformation is not only about technology, right? When you talk about excellence centers, we're not talking not just about big buildings with modern pieces of equipment. The main function of the excellence centers is not only to train their own students, but elevate the standards of the whole system. So education, technical training, exchange practices, methodologies, and materials and experience with other centers. We can say that these centers are living platforms of innovation. They have training, applied investigation, the development of the teachers, service to companies, and the key is these centers, they improve in knowledge and practices, and the system is converted like this. And the experience in the um, Centers for Vocational Excellence in Europe shows this. They integrate the providers, the formation, the universities, local governments, and they can hasten the quality and also the innovation. And this is something really important to learn. The center is not an end in itself, but it's a space of articulation that serves all the ecosystem for education and technical and professional training. I'd like to highlight some critical dimensions of these centers. First, the pedagogical innovation. The centers are places where they have curriculums and methodologies that are active, where there is the use of simulation, analysis of data, and they are educative innovations. So an example that in we have an implementation in Europe of the models that can intervene with all the professional training, avoiding the institutions to have to start from scratch. So innovation is a common asset. Second thing, the professors and the directors. They are the key champions for the change. So in Singapore, we have the institutions of education, technical education in Singapore, and we have the training, coaching class, and that strengthened the quality of the teaching and it brought prestige to the technical training. And the experiences confirmed that when the teachers are co designers of the innovation, the multiplier effect extends and it helps schools and providers. The third aspect that is critical is the connection with the production. It doesn't work alone. It works with collaboration with companies, big sectors, and in Moroccan, for instance, we have excellence centers where the labs work with local companies to solve real problems, and that allows the curriculum to be nourished, to be authentic. At the same time, the region can improve the competitiveness. And then when we have an aspect that the excellence centers they are network in Africa and Asia. We have an excellent center that has been showing how the alliance with the technical training centers and companies can spread pieces of equipment, methodologies, curriculums that are co-designed between several countries. And it's not only a brilliant center, but they help each other. And the fifth point is that the orientation through strategic and emerging sectors in this digital transition context. So, towards a more sustainable work, more sustainable future. For example, we have in Australia the TAFE Excellence Centers. They focused in renewable energies, renewable tourism, digital technologies, and these centers they became spaces for talent and innovation. So when the system is changed, when the centers are established, the curriculums are updated faster, and then the teachers are not only users and they turn into leaders of change. The management is strengthened with higher levels uh, of productivity. And we also have the investments that is public and private because the centers generate trust. The lessons learned are really clear that so that they can work, these centers need an explicit transfer of capacities of governance shared with the industry to universities, sustainable funding, equidot strategies, so that these excellence centers can also reach rural zones and youth in situation of vulnerability. The excellent cannot be a privilege of just a couple. It has to be a public thing that will serve the ecosystem, that will demonstrate, give a standard, and train. And the centers become engines for productivity and for a green transaction and digital transaction. And this is my contribution. Thank you very much for the opportunity and for inviting me to this event. Thank you very much, Ramon, for telling about the governance and the systemic character of the transformation, the digital transformation, that it doesn't come just from leadership, but also from institutional growth, right? That's what these experiences in the excellence centers and technical education. Well, I would like to call someone to comment on your first intervention, Maria Rosa Velasquez. She is an specialist in digital education and UNICEF for Latin America and Caribbean. Welcome, Maria Jose, and go on with your comment. Thank you very much, Amparo, and thank you very much, Ramon, for sharing this spoilers, so to speak, about these excellent centers. It's super valid that we also have on the table the combination of technologies with these new trends that we have around the world, the green part, the digital transformation, they walk together, right? So it's really strategic to take a look at both together. And I want to know more about the Excellence Center in Australia that you mentioned that are also talking about um, the climate change and everything about the green economy. Ramon, I have a question for you, especially about what you were mentioning. It has to do with the innovative experiences that you just mentioned. They are really powerful as I see them, but from a perspective of rights, how can we assure that these innovations start as pilots and cost like expensive pilots, and then we have to change them so that they can develop? How can we make them to start taking a look at the scalability and also an inclusive look with all of that to reach populations, especially in situation of vulnerability? Um, so these populations, we need to work with them an extra mile, right? So, Ramon, I would like to hear from you. Thank you, Maho, for the fraction and the question. Well, in a perspective of rights, any innovation in education in excellent centers, it has to be conceived as a public well, not something that is alone, isolated, but we need to conceive that as a platform of service of everyone. And this should be guided more by criteria of equity and accessibility, equity, accessibility, and belonging, and put those who need the most to the centers, right? Excellence should not be the experience with just a few. It has to be the goal of the whole educational and technical training system. That's why the pilot projects, they need to be born with a clear vision of scalability. That's what we learn. We need to transform in standards of models and good practices. In thinking about rights, all the centers have to be converted in excellent centers. And to reach that, the international experiences has been bringing important lessons. First thing, to have solid governance frameworks. So we have to connect the pilots with the national and original. We have to avoid they to believe in these islands of excellence that are detached from the rest of the system. And then they need mechanisms for funding, sustainable alliances, where the private sector, the civil society, and the communities work together. And last, the evaluation of the technical quality, taking a look at the inclusion, the gender equality, and reduction of uh, territorial and digital gaps. This way, innovations are experiences no longer isolated, and they are a reality to everyone, and everyone has the right to have an inclusive education and with a good digital quality in this digital area. Thank you very much, Ramon. Now I'm gonna give Fernando. You hear me? Yes. Thank you very much, Ramon. Now I would like to mention a little about what Maho from UNICEF was saying. We have this perspective of rights. This is really important, right? And thinking about generating a digital transformation that actually will put girls and boys and teenagers in first thing. And the question that we have, what are the key elements that we need in our educational systems? Thinking not only about the present, but also having a perspective of the future. How can we plan a systemic governance? We have 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Fernando. I'd like to uh, praise. I'm really happy to be here. We dedicate this to working in inclusive spaces. Your no question about the key elements is the $1 million question, right? I believe that's to put the boys and girls and teenagers in the center of the digital transformation in education. We need to reimagine education, actually. We need a transformation in the educative system. But what happens when we think about in transformation in the education system? It's necessary to have our thoughts and works in first line. We think about the teachers and we say, what can they do better? They don't want to get modern, but we don't think that actually behind that we have a system that is highly strengthened that works as an enabler so that the teachers can uh, get better in this world with the fast technological change. So we need to redirect our efforts to a system that can get strengthened, and from that system to work and strengthen the workers of the first line workers, which are the professors. We need a more systemic focus to have the use and the appropriation of digital implementations in education, not only access, Fernando, and I'd like to put emphasis, and I repeat that this is important so that the narrative is also depends on the systems and the strengthening of the systems and the appropriation that will happen in new technology. So it's not only to connect, it's not only to get some digital devices and put in the classrooms, but we need to work, focus on pedagogy, including new technologies as part of the curriculums. This is of the essence. Well, then I was listening to Beatrice. It was really interesting also the positioning of the leaders that it's necessary in the digital transformation. And it seems to me that it's a leadership about leadership, but we can also explore a little more. It's about the part of boys and girls and teenagers. How can we strengthen the systems, the mechanisms of participation for boys, girls, and teenagers in such important topics like education and technology. And it seems that we need to walk the extra miles to reach the institutional mechanisms. We have some mechanisms established. We have the students' committees that work for strengthening leadership in boys, girls, and teenagers. But how can we make this more inclusive? How can we make this more uh, uh, give more access to that? And how can we make the voice of the young leaders also arrive to the table of the decision makers so that boys and girls and teenagers are also stakeholders? They are key actors in this ecosystem of digital transformation in education. About governance, we need based in evidence. We need intersectoral, multi-sector based in evidence, and we need to have the actors in this ecosystem and who are the civil society, the decision makers, the teachers, and they also need to be at the table talk. And it seems to me that is really important. One actor that I always see outside this table of conversation are the big companies or technological sectors that develop technologies. They also have a strong responsibility in this ecosystem to work hand in hand with the decision makers that are developing the system and strengthen it more because we have technologies that are more inclusive and that can actually support the educational system, right? And finally, Fernando, now my second final seconds, seems to me that strengthening the system has to be something not related to nostalgia, no, not in the past, not in COVID, right? Not thinking about the teachers and the boys are bored. Well, we learned from the past. We are in a new present, and actually, we need to anticipate the future. Otherwise, there will be more technological revolutions that will engulf us, and We are giving baby steps, but we need to have this systemic changes a little anticipated for the future, right? That's what I had to say. Thank you very much for your space. Thank you very much, Maho. And now we are going to invite Martin Cáceres, the director of the Innovation Center of Chile. Martin, thank you very much. Thank you, Fernando. This is really interesting what Maria Jose was commenting, and it's also interesting the work that UNICEF is doing about the protection and safeguard of the rights of kids. This is also an interesting work, which is the updating and the observation of the rights of the kids. So it's not possible to take a look at the kids' rights in the participation of digital resources, give autonomy to the kids to explore the digital world, but at the same time safeguard their fundamental rights. And we see that this is more and more related to this forbidding of technology that are earlier, and also there's this discussion about the affection of the prohibition. So the question that I want to ask is, how, from the perspective of rights, we safeguard the participation and the full development of boys and girls, and what are the concrete mechanisms for public policies that are seen that are possible to incorporate to this development of the kids? Maho? Thank you, Martin. Well, we got to keep talking about this. There are many, many things from the Pandora box to talk about. As you mentioned, Martin, we need concrete mechanisms and public policies, and it seems to be really interesting. How can we transcend go a little further from what we're doing? First thing, that we need to work and rethink of the systems strengthen with an focus of life cycle. And this is a little controversial topic, because how can we start with the digital transformation in education since 0 years old, first childhood, until the teenagers. And the key for that is to think beyond the screens, because we always think that digital transformation is to give a cell phone, to give a tablet, and put something on the classrooms. But actually, the digital transformation transcends the pedagogical part, and it also can help to make better decisions and help us to have better and more data that will also inform how can we improve the educational systems from a system based on technology. So one of the keys is, let's think beyond the screen. It's not only the cell phone, not only the tablet. We have to make the most of the technologies that we're not using. Second thing, it seems to me that is really important to have this focus that is flexible and inclusive to new technologies, right? And then we're missing that, right? I think we're working really close to decision makers with different stakeholders in the system. Not all the boys learn the same, not all the girls learned in the same spaces. How can we deal with this different kids? We have kids who are not in school. We are people who are migrating. They are immigrants. We have teenagers. We have the rural people, and then we have to have something that is inclusive and that is able to work with the different childhoods. And we cannot put them inside one single box, but we need to work with these changes and diversity in childhood. They need the same opportunities. And I guess my time is up. Well, now I give the mic again to Amparo so that we can have the last part. Amparo, thank you very much. Fernando, you hear me, right? Yes, we hear now. Oh, perfect. Well, we want to invite Martin again to have his main intervention. So, Martin, we want to know about the perspective of the management to medium and long term. How is Chile planning the digital transformation, considering not only the current but also the emerging challenges and so many things, just like AI, so that you can have systemic strategies and also offer inclusion in the digital transformation? Thank you, Martin. Uh, Well, we have a super interesting collaboration with UNESCO. We already started work since last year, and it's related to these challenges. In Chile, we've been making a lot of progress in digital transformation. We have infrastructure, it is really solid. For example, we know that around 97% of the places they already have internet. We have a challenge with the quality, but we do have internet connection in most part of the schools. And at the same time, we have a policy that it's a state policy. So from the 90s until now, we've been making this progress. We have been integrating digital abilities to our curriculum, and we have a good position in our position. But the artificial intelligence is also a challenge. Just like we mentioned, more access to technology brings more uh, challenges, new exclusions. They not only have access to the platforms that are free, but also the paid one and the new AIs. We have an extra advantage. At the same time, there are kids that can be benefited from the free of charge tools, and just like Gemini and Chat GPT that is for free. And there's not only access but also the use. And at the same time, we have really important challenges in regulation. How can we have regulation for the companies so that the educational apps can be by design safe? This is a huge challenge because many tools that are in the classroom, they were not thought about for education. So we have been working in Chile in an integral framework for the digital transformation under a proposal that it's called Digital Transformation Collaborative. And this is based on thinking about the digital reformation from some pillars, the coordination of leaders. I mean, how can we defend a minister, interministerial, in the questions until we get to school? And the pillar of coordination and leadership, the pillar of infrastructure. How can we have uh, the chance to give conditions, basic conditions that will make us to make happen, and also the cost and sustainability. How can we have mechanisms for digital transformation with a long term? This is also the pillar of capacity of culture. How can we incorporate the abilities and the skills that are related to digital in our curriculum? And also, how can we train the teachers, not only the teachers, but also the families? And we're making process in digital transformation. And this is the content and the solutions. And how can we have the systems? We want to provide high quality content, and the pillar of data and evidence. It's central for this model because if we make progress in digitalization, we can have platforms connected between themselves that will make possible for us to make decisions. And this model is applied to ourselves. We elaborate a diagnose, and we have multiple actors, and then we have national and regional. We have a diagnose, methodology of focal groups with experts from the industry, from the educational world, the public sector, so that we have the point to project future actions. We also are agreeing a long-term plan so that we can have transformation, digital transformation in education. In Mexico right now, we can predict the future, and this is really important to be done. Thank you very much, Martina. We want to invite Beatriz to comment on your intervention, Beatriz. If you're, if it's possible, go on. Thank you very much. It seems to me to be really interesting what you've been doing in Chile and for being working with UNESCO. And for me, I was working about the sustainability of this politics. Would be interesting to see how they are planning this to be sustainable. And also there's a topic that in this moment, the most important thing, it's not only to install a digital technology, but also to establish the process so that we can keep reviewing it, because technology is growing at a speed that the updates are turtle steps. And then we have to establish leadership, the level of ministry, the regional level, local level, so that we can establish processes to adjust really fast the needs and the technologies that are always changing, which is one of the challenges that we have the macro installation and a super investment, and then in 3 years nothing is updated anymore, you know. So it seems to be that your vision is really valid, the medium term vision, and how you are seeing how to invest so that is sustainable and updatable. Yes, that's why in this model, one of the pillars, well, I think the question is related to two pillars, the coordination and leadership, which is focusing on who are the leaders and of the ministry, the coordinations inter ministries and schools, the systems, and also at the school level, we need leaders that are trained. This is a long way because many times the process on the standards that they have, since the leaders for digital, it's not explicit. And we need not only the technology itself, but we need to step back and see that leaders need to know how to make decisions in constant change in contexts. And we need to have a basis. We need to know that they have this to have this expertise. They need to know how to question the changes in a participative way, and that's the most important thing, to know how to combine the leadership, the teaching. It's important to know and to incorporate that in the decision making process. So it's a type of leadership that makes decisions that are assertive, and we are incorporating that in the mechanisms, for instance, in the system of professional development, the standards, to have digital competence frameworks with aspects that are related to digital leadership. And we have training for coordinations, and we also have the suggestion to having this professional development, this competence. It's really important to uh, have this competence and incorporate it in the training. Well, thank you very much, Martine, from your answer. Now, I want to tell you that we are moving towards the end of this panel, and we would like to say a huge thank you very much to Beatriz, to Ramon, Majo, and Martin. I believe that this conversation gave really clear ideas of how the governance can be taught from the sustainability and the inclusion perspectives, right? So technology is not a generator of new gaps, and the need that good leaders is also connected to what we worked on the first gathering and thinking about the whole system and also about thinking about the innovative experiences for the change and also the rights of the students and the need of the public management. So these are the pillars with digital policies centered in rights and equity. So thank you very much again to all this great panel. And now I give the word to Amparo for our closing. Thank you very much, Fernando, and thanks to our incredible panel. We also thank everyone for being so generous for your time. We thank everyone who joined this public event, and I want to share with you that we have members from 35 countries, people from our region, Latin America, Caribbean, in this great regional conversation. We've been trying to make it really dynamic, okay? The conversation today shows that governance and leadership are the first point for any transformation, live alone. The transformation takes time, right? And we'll keep talking and meeting ourselves in these spaces. We remind you that this is part of a cycle of talks, and we invite you to save the date for the next dates on October 16th to discuss infrastructure and pedagogical solutions, and also November 13th to close the cycle by talking about sustainability and financing. Now we move on to the second part of our day and the a closed workshop that is intended exclusively for the participants of the digital talent for the education transformation and innovation course. We ask those who are part of the course to remain in this room, and the rest of the public, thank you very much for joining us and see you next time. Thank you very much.